Good evening. Fall River Community Media is pleased to sponsor tonight's forum featuring the candidates running for City Council. My name is Keith Tebow, Director of FRC Media, and I'll be serving as the moderator for tonight's forums. We're holding 2 City Council forums tonight. The second forum will be held later this evening beginning at 8 p.m. All candidates were invited to participate, and the makeup of our 2 panels was determined via a drawing. The candidates who are with us for our first panel are, alphabetically, Joseph Camara, Michelle Dion, Matthew Springer, and Ricky Tiff. We did hear from 3 other candidates tonight who regretfully are not here tonight. Sean Kadim, current city councilor, had called us saying that he had a work commitment tonight and could not be here. Also tonight, City Councilor Brad Kilby called us. Unfortunately, his father was rushed to the hospital a few days ago, so we wish him and his family all the best with that situation. And City Councilor Leo Pelletier also called us saying that he is under the weather and unable to join us tonight. And also joining us tonight is Mark Malacombe. Mark, thank you for coming. We appreciate it. Thank you. Also joining us tonight is a panel of journalists who will be asking questions of the candidates. They are Mike Sylvia from the Fall River Reporter, Phil Devitt from the Herald News, Pam Martin from FRG TV, Alan Zarek from WSAR Radio, and Donna Mota from FRC Media. The format for tonight's debate is as follows. Our event will last 90 minutes. There will be no opening statements, but each candidate will be allowed a 90-second closing statement. Each candidate will answer every question posed by our panelists, and will have 90 seconds to answer each question. There will be no rebuttals. Prior to each question, we will randomly draw a candidate's name, and that candidate will respond to the question first. So after that person answers the question, we'll move to the right and around until every candidate has an opportunity to answer the question. In the event, and probably likely tonight, that all of you will be able to answer a question first, we'll put the names back into the cup and we'll draw again to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to answer a question first. We'll also hold a drawing as well to select which candidate will present his or her closing statement first later on. With that said, we are ready to go. We'll get right to our questions. Our first question will be asked by Michael Sylvia from the Fore Reporter and will be answered by Michelle Dion first. Michael.
Good evening. So for the incumbents, which is one tonight, since you've been elected to the City Council, what accomplishments are you most proud of? And for the non-incumbents, if you're elected, what would be your #1 priority going into 2020 that 2 years later you would be able to say is your most greatest accomplishments?
As a newcomer, I would like to be able to be inclusive, get our city on a more positive track, move towards sustainability, stability, put our city back on the map in a positive light, move forward with our assets, showing what Fall River has for assets, as we have many. We need an emphasis on community, bringing the community together, helping our youth, helping our elders, still battling the opioid crisis. Education still needs to be paramount. And I believe that when I'm elected, I will be able to do that. We need to work together. We need to be a team, not go in opposite directions. I believe that though people have different views and can be on opposite sides, that is a positive thing, because that's how you come up with solutions, by having robust conversation, robust ideas to lead to solutions for our city.
Thank you. Mr. Malacombe.
So education would be the #1 priority for myself. I believe that in order for the city to have economic development, redevelopment, or to have tourism or businesses come here, we need to put education at the forefront. I personally would try to work with Senator Rodericks and hopefully with the help of Governor Baker, we could get the Promise and Cherish Act passed so that $1.5 billion comes back to the urban schools in our Commonwealth. I believe that Michelle touched on some things that I would like to also state, that even though we have diverse opinions and we come from diverse backgrounds, whether you're an incumbent or a newcomer, you have to be able to work with each other. My background is being a professional quarterback, a leader in the business community. I've owned my own businesses. I've been a manager of other people's business, both in construction and sales. And I think that without everybody working together, you're going to be divided, and a kingdom divided is a kingdom conquered. So that being said, I know that two people working together can get twice as much done as one person working twice as hard. And I would consider it an honor to be a part of the city council, work with anyone that's voted in there, as well as the new mayor, to achieve some of these things. We do have a problem with the opioid crisis. That's something that we need education about, on both sides, both for the addicted as well as folks in the community that own their own business.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Springer.
So hands down, biggest thing for me is bringing back a positive image back to the city. We all deserve it. We live in an amazing city. We have a great culture, a lot of things going on here. Unfortunately, in the past 6 months that have gone, we've had this black cloud that has kind of plagued us and given us unfortunate negative attention in the media for things that shouldn't be said about Fall River. So my goal is bringing back that positive image, promoting our restaurants, our waterfronts, bringing back those things that Fall River was known for back when Fall River had mills and textiles and great things, and people actually wanted to come here from out of town. It seems to me a lot of people come here, get an education here, then they kind of branch off to different places in the community. So the big goal is education in Fall River, work here, live here, spend your money here. If we spend our money here, our economy gets bigger and better, and everybody is going to thrive on a better economy and people staying here. Thank you.
Mr. Tith.
Well, as the voice of the people, I would like to bring City Hall back to the people, and also we'll focus on economic development. I know our city is great for the mills and stuff, but we need more technologies in. So I'm planning to have more training to get ready to do like surface mount PC boards and solder and stuff. And also, I will also try to push with public safety, because as we know that there's have been so many incidents in this couple months in our city. So definitely I will help push the public safety and economic development.
Thank you. Mr. Camara.
So it's a great question, and I've been very fortunate. And if you like what all of the candidates have said, and I agree, I like what all they've said, you have to love what I've been doing, because education is paramount to what we need to do in this community. And I was very fortunate to be one of the lead individuals in building 10 new schools and now being part of building a new Durfee High School. We must continue to address and fix our education system. Public safety, the first resolution I ever filed was a resolution that relined all the water mains in the city of Fall River. And it's been going on over 20 years. We've done nearly 70 miles of water main replacement, and another 40 miles will be complete. Every new water main in this city will be new. That's something that's never been heard of, never been done before. That's something I'm very proud of. It's a resolution that I filed myself. As far as creating jobs for the city, I'm very proud to be a member of the council that has created not one industrial park with Commerce Park, but two with the Biopark. I also had to take land by eminent domain years ago to help create Meditech to come in that facility. So it's all about finding the areas that we can bring new jobs to our community so people can work here, live here, and raise a family here. Public safety, I'm very proud of my record on public safety, where we've given all new fire apparatus, police cruisers, replenished all the departments, everything that they need to do their job. We have to keep giving them new equipment and new testing and new, everything they need, from fire apparatus to all the stuff that they need to do their job. Development of our waterfront is key and instrumental, and that's what we're working on now, and I'm very proud of my record as a city councilor in doing all of these things that will make Fall River a great place to live.
Thank you. Our next question will be asked by Phil Devitt from the Herald News, and will be answered first by Joseph Camara.
The mayor is currently the only local official who signs off on letters of non-opposition and host community agreements for marijuana companies seeking to set up shop here in the city. State Rep Carol Fiola has filed a bill that would require those companies to seek approval from a majority of locally elected officials in Massachusetts communities. In Fall River's case, that would be the City Council. Would you support this measure, and how much oversight do you think the council should have in the approval process?
Well, thank you. Yes, I would support this measure. I think the state now is finding that they made a mistake when they gave sole authority to one individual to sign off on these licenses, not just because of what happened in Fore River. Fore River might have been a big part of it, but other communities were doing the same type of thing. Other communities were asking these people who wanted a letter of non-opposition to buy fire apparatus, to buy police cruisers, to fix up streets in their neighborhoods, do infrastructure repairs, and that's not fair to people that are going into that industry. We don't ask that of anyone else who's looking to start a business or bring a company to Fall River or any other community. So the state dropped the ball, and I understand that this is all new to us. It's new to the state, it's new to the communities. No one really knows how to go about it. I think what we should have probably done is put restrictions in place, like we did with the strip clubs, to make sure that they're not near the schools, they're not near the residential places, as we have right now with a lot of congestion over there, and make it safe for everybody to be able to get in, get out, and do what they need to do. But the state has to put more guidelines in place and regulations so that the sole authority does not fall on the one individual in any community, and it should be within the city council or selectmen or either other department heads brought together, have a board that will address where these are going to go and how they're going to be placed and how many you're going to have in the community. Right now, we don't have any of that. It's unfortunate.
Ms. Dion.
I also fully agree with that measure. I think part of the problem was we're on the forefront of the cannabis industry. And like anything else, we learn through sometimes trial and error and unforeseen problems. And no one could anticipate how things were going to roll out, how things were going to end up. We do have some businesses that perhaps are in jeopardy. Until everything follows its course, we won't know whether all 14 people should maintain their approvals or they shouldn't. And that, that's just some of the problems. I believe that the number one thing we need to do is zoning. I think zoning is very important. That was not addressed prior to people getting their letters of non-opposition, and it was not specifically determined where people could set up, where they can't. Because we're also going to be looking at cultivation and manufacturing. That's going to add another, I believe, another layer to the problems, and that's why I think zoning is important. With that said, I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, I don't know. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought here. Brother.
Just wrap it up.
Just wrap it up. So yes, I think we obviously have things to learn. We can do it better.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Malcolm.
Thank you. I do believe that with true leadership, the situation that was beforehand with the mayor deciding letters of non-opposition could have worked. However, hindsight being 20/20, possibly a board could be appointed independently. I don't know exactly how that we would go about that. I did not have the pleasure of reading Carol Fiola's legislative proposal. However, I would love to read that and truly understand in order to answer this more accurately. But with true leadership, I think anyone could have made really great decisions for our city, putting our citizens first, and realizing that one of the first and actually most busy marijuana facility, I believe it's off of Commonwealth Street. There's sort of an overrun of traffic there. The folks that live there sometimes have a hard time, and I've found out through folks that do live there, have a hard time just getting home at the end of the day, which I think is terribly wrong, considering when you're done with work, you just want to get home, get to your family, have dinner, and spend time with your loved ones. So I think we need to definitely, like Michelle said, take a look at some of the issues of where they can set up shop, how they set up shop, and that we could have an independent board appointed, and how that would be done, I think remains to be seen.
Thank you. Mr. Springer.
Okay, yeah, so I'm going to definitely 100% agree on not one person having the power to hand out these letters. We kind of saw how that played out in the past few months. So having the city council have at least a 50% say in who's getting these letters, where they're going, putting the checks and balance in places to make sure they're not, near a school or near some sort of educational facility where children are seeing this. The other thing is, I want to touch on Mr. Malcolm's thing is that facility he's talking about, I happen to work about a stone's throw away from there. I drive by every single day. Traffic, is it a problem? Absolutely. Why is it a problem? There's only one selling recreational marijuana. So everybody from all over creation comes there. Supply and demand is economics 101. If there's more, people will get dispersed, just like a liquor store. Only one person sold it, they'd all be there. With that being said, I think the thing that comes up a lot is capping them. I don't think capping them is a good idea. It's kind of like we don't cap other industries. Let the market kind of dictate how those things play out, and every single one of them is going to give the city money. Whatever ones survive, survive. Whatever ones don't.
Thank you. Mr. Tith.
Well, I think in the past, all our city official, we make a decision only by individual or by a group of people. But for me, I would like to, moving forward, like just, get in whatever that is we have come into the city. If you view it by together as a city official, either city council or the mayor office. But I don't think that we should cap the permit license for it, because that's the revenue that is coming into our city right now. And we should do, every time we have a business coming in, we should look into the bone zone to see if there's a school or if there's traffic high, because as we right now, there's a lot of high traffic in the parking space and stuff. So I'm not opposed on that.
Thank you. Our next question will come from Pam Martin, and will be answered first by Mark Mollicone.
Okay, so we've had this discussion before here in Fall River. How important is for you to have city employees who live here in Fall River? And do you favor stipends for city employers who do indeed live here in the city of Fall River?
So I think that's a great question. Thank you for asking that. I've had the privilege of visiting several city stations, such as DCM. I've talked with them at great length. Police officers as well, firefighters. I've gotten to know them fairly well over the years, and especially here lately. And I think that there should be stipends for city workers, and I do believe that they should, for some time, live in our city. If they're going to make our city safer, if they're going to work to put out fires in our city, if they're going to be a part of our community, they should be taken care of. I was always taught that charity starts at home. And I feel that if you're invested in a community that you live in, you're more apt to take care of it. And I truly do believe we have a great police force, great first responders in our EMTs, our firefighters. I'm very impressed with them, their level of education and how they handle things. And I would love to see them be more a part of our city, as well as myself. I was born and raised here. I believe in this city. I had an opportunity to live in multiple other places, and I chose here. This was my choice to come back to my city that I was born and raised in. So, yeah, I would love to see our city employees, as well as others, come back to our city, help support it, and make it great once again. Thank you.
Mr. Springer.
Great question. So I'm lucky enough to be friendly with several firefighters and policemen on the fire department and the police department. And some do live here, started living here, and have moved on to other communities. Why does that happen? Is it because of what's going on here in the city, how they're, I don't know what's not keeping those certain city employees here. They started here, originally worked here, and then moved on. So should priority be given to citizens that work here to be on a police or fire or other city positions? Absolutely. I think if you live here, you work here, you're going to enjoy it here, you're going to spend your money here, you're going to own a home here, you're going to pay us taxes here. Hands down, people that live here should get priority on those certain things. Just like Mr. Malcolm said, I've been born and raised here my entire life, never left, own a home here, pay taxes here, so I'm very keen on those salaries going to people that are living here and investing their time back into our community. So I think that's a great question, and I think that's something that definitely should be looked at.
Mr. Tith.
Well, appreciation for hard working, why not? Because I know, I say a lot of people, like for example, fire departments, the guys that I know, and also public work, Forest Civil Public Work, you know, I went to talk to them and stuff, you know, it's, the city is not giving enough appreciation to them, and, you know, they feel like they're working tirelessly, and then they don't show anything. If, for example, if you're working in industrial, if you want to get promoted, you know, you get appreciation of that, but on your hard work, and maybe we could do an assessment and just giving a stipend to somebody that maybe you like or in favor. For example, let's say John Doe. If John Doe's working hard, give an assessment, put it on the Facebook or something, you know, to see how it's that report back, and then give it to him.
Thank you. Mr. Kamara.
Well, I was born and raised in the city, and I've never lived anywhere else, and I think it's a great place to live. But the problem, I think, is that I don't want to force people who don't want to live here because they work here. I think what we should do is make this city a place where people want to come to and live, and if they want to work here, that's fine too. But I think it's very tough to regulate when someone's working here, whether they're actually true living here or not living here. We've heard what's going on right now with certain individuals, so it's tough to regulate, number one. And if someone's living in a city and they happen to inherit a house in another community, whether it's Westport or something, what do? Turn that house, sell it, not be able to move there if they inherit that house? I think we should look at all the people in this city who live here, but yet work in other communities. So we live in a free country. I think we should live in a free city. People, we should make this city the best possible city to live in. I believe it is. That's why I live here. For where I live and what I have and what I can offer my family, I think this is the greatest place to live, work, and raise a family. I've said it before, I'll say it again. But I don't think we can be forcing people. If we're going to give you a job, then you need to move to this community, you need to do this, because it's tough to regulate. Their heart's not really going to be into it. And eventually, you know what they're going to do? Find a job somewhere else in their community if that's what all the communities come to do. It just doesn't work, I don't think. I encourage people to live here, as I do. I work in the city. I'm very fortunate that I work in the city as well, and I raise my family here. But I think it's very difficult to try to regulate that and enforce it on people who are here. They'll find ways to go somewhere else. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dion.
Yes. I think that ideally, if we can have residents fill the positions that are available in the city, that is a great thing. However, I believe that there are, you know, many circumstances, family situations. Sometimes people take care of elderly parents. I think there's legitimate reasons not to live in the city. I think it's important for elected officials, obviously, have to be residents of this city. I think specific positions, they should be city residents. But above and beyond that, you have to go along with, you know, the housing market might dictate why somebody does or doesn't live in the city. And I agree with Councilor Kamara that, you know, those type of reasons, I don't think that you can just pigeonhole people. As far as stipends, I don't agree with stipends. I believe that when you apply for a job, you know what you're applying for, what your requirements are, what the expectations are, how much money you're going to make. So when you agree to that, you're agreeing to that salary. And I don't believe that there's a reason to give somebody anything extra. You know, there are people who always do above and beyond. Many people in private business that do above and beyond on a daily basis and don't get an extra cent. It's just their work ethic. So I am definitely against stipends.
Thank you. Our next question will be asked by Alan Zarek and will be answered first by Ricky Tith.
As a means to increase voter turnout, should Fall River have ballots available in Portuguese, Spanish, and other languages?
I think it's definitely moving forward, maybe in 2022 election, you know, we could have more cultural language than, for example, this in Cambodian, in Portuguese, and Spanish. Because I know it's like, for example, in the Cambodian community, there's a lot of people with a citizenship, but they don't know what the voting on the ballot list. So definitely we need to find ways to encourage more of the language barrier.
Thank you. Mr. Camara.
I mean, I speak Spanish and Portuguese fluently. I don't know, you have to be a U.S. citizen to be able to vote. If you want to offer those in different languages, I'm not sure it'll increase voter turnout. It might make it easier for some people to vote when they're at the ballot place. So it's basically a name and a title of position that they're voting for. So it's not a big, long explanation. I think the best way to increase voter turnout is to make more public aware announcements and educate children early on the importance of voting, the importance of participating in civic duties. And I can remember there was a teacher, I can't remember his name, but at Morton Middle School, every election, the school would they would vote. Students in 7th and 8th grade would participate and have an in-school, in-classroom voting session. And then they'd look at the results and they'd see who won the election. I think we need to do more of that to let students and children know early on the importance of voting. And hopefully the parents will do it as well. I think it's a right and a privilege that sometimes we tend to take for granted, and more people have to be aware of when the voting date is. I don't think there's enough hype about when the election is coming up, who the candidates are, and that type of individuals, what they have to offer and what they don't. I think there's something, just to put ballots in foreign languages, I'm not sure it's just going to attract more people to turn out to vote. It might make it easier for some people, but I'm not necessarily going to increase voter turnout.
Ms. Dion?
We definitely do have a very diverse community, and I agree. Could it potentially help people? Might some people be a little more willing to come forward and vote because they feel they would have a better understanding? It's probably, I believe it's a good idea in terms of a tool, but I don't believe it would necessarily increase the number of people who come out to vote. I also agree that the younger the age that you instill the importance of voting, the more people will vote as adults, because voting is very important. Many people believe, oh, what's the point? Nothing's going to change. I can't change anything. But they don't realize that there are many people like them that have that same thought. And if you have, if one person can make a difference, there's people that have won by 7 votes in the past. So if those 7 people hadn't gone out to vote, that person wouldn't have won an election. So they don't realize how even a very small number really, truly does matter. And then, we often hear people after the fact. We hear the moaners and the groaners. Well, perhaps if they took a more active role and tried to affect change by voting, then they would be happier with the results after the fact, and they may have less to complain about.
Mr. Malcolm.
Thank you. I do believe that educating our youth and folks of an older age and using multilingual literature to help people make an informed and educated decision is important. I would say that education is the cornerstone and the great equalizer of everything in our society. So the more that the youth and other folks are educated and have those multilingual tools to be able to make an educated decision, the better I feel like our city would fare. In order for folks to feel included, they should be given the opportunity to receive their literature or a ballot in their native language, which they feel more comfortable. I too grew up in speaking multiple languages. My family on my father's side was Italian. I learned French and Spanish in school. I had friends that were Portuguese. I lived in Germany as well, and I tried to pick up as much of those languages as possible, but I always tried to adapt to their language or tried to at least understand what they were speaking about. And I just think that folks coming over here from other parts of the world, even other parts of the country that do speak different languages, they should be given the opportunity to vote and get literature in their native language to feel more comfortable. So
Thank you. Mr. Springer.
Okay, yeah, so do I think that having a ballot in a different language is going to necessarily increase voter turnout? No. Is it a good tool to maybe make that individual more comfortable when they go into the ballot, so they don't have to use a translator or they can actually read what's going on? Working in real estate and in the medical field, I understand language barriers and how they affect people every single day of my life. And are they challenges? Yes. I don't speak anything but English, So I do understand the difficulty of when you're trying to communicate a point to somebody and you can't get the right words out, how difficult that can be. They said it, education. I was absolutely amazed when I was going out just getting nomination signatures of people that were residents and said, hey, would you sign my nomination papers? Give them a reason why, and they say, oh, I'm not a registered voter. It was probably 1 out of 10. So I think really driving that point across, like they said, how elections sometimes have an incredibly narrow margin to educate people that going to vote isn't a big, long process. It probably takes 30 seconds if anybody's ever done it. So driving more people with education, how it's their civic duty, it's their only voice. We can talk about it all day, but where it makes that change is at the ballot box. And I think that's super, super important to drive that point across to the citizens that going to vote is where you're going to make the change.
Thank you. Our next question will be asked by Donna Mota from FRC Media and will be answered first by Matthew Springer.
If elected to the City Council, would you like to see the Fall River Office of Economic Development be brought back to work independently solely on economic development? Or do you feel that the current Economic Development Director is doing a good job in bringing businesses into the city? Which one would you rather see happen?
Great question. Economic development is obviously a huge thing that's going on in the city right now. It seems like every time we open up a different social media or the newspaper, something new is opening. So does that mean what's in place right now is working? Maybe. Is having a sole entity in charge of that going to bring more business or develop more housing or different like that? I don't really have a good answer to that. I think things using like a lot of our developers just use the TIFs. They like to use CDA money, which is great for developing old structures instead of just knocking them down. So I think whatever's in place right now is working really well. We have tons of new businesses, young entrepreneurs, young people that want to come here, want to live here, want to open businesses here. And there's been more that have opened up in the past probably year that I can think of and longer than I can remember as far as economic development. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tiff.
Well, I think the way our city right now is moving forward, and also economic is coming in, and also our new economic development. I think she's doing a very good job. And so why do we need to take something else and replace something new, then start all over again? So, and I think it's just only her. Short terms, and I think she should get an opportunity to grow more. And as a city council, we could help her finding areas and point it out. Work with her.
Thank you. Mr. Camara?
Yeah, I've always been a strong supporter of economic development. In the past, I voted for every TIF that's ever come down, and just recently I voted for another one at the last council meeting, and even a tie for the residents. But I think that the economy is at an all-time low. The current director of economic development is under contract, so it's not as easy as just saying, let's, say goodbye. And I think we should give her an opportunity to do what she's doing. The economy is doing well. Unemployment's at an all-time low. There are a lot of projects that we haven't put in place right now. So what happened in the past, unfortunately, was done away with, and now we're going in a new direction, and I don't think that this is the time to say this is not working. So let's see what happens and work it out, and let's give it a chance.
Ms. Dion.
I don't think that any one person should be the face of economic development. I believe it should be a collaborative effort. I think there should be multiple people involved. With that said, I agree that we are on track for economic development. We have we have a downtown and waterfront urban renewal plans that are coming down the road. There are going to be multiple parcels of land that are going to be ready to be developed. I think that the present economic development individual has many irons in the fire. I think it's too soon to judge because the results haven't been recognized as of yet. And I think we need to allow time to see what will develop. And I think as we move on, we can, you can always streamline. You can always change. So I don't think we need to lock ourselves into one idea.
Mr. Malcolm.
So I think that the folks to my right and to my left made very good points. I myself personally know quite a few people on the Fore Office of Economic Development, which I believe they did a great job in the past, and some differences between themselves as well as the mayor may have caused some of that split. I believe in whatever is working is what you run with. Being a former quarterback professionally and a leader, you have to run with what works. And if we have projects that are irons in the fire, as Michelle had mentioned, that are moving forward, and we have other ideas in the pipeline, then we need to work together in order to make those things happen. The only way those things happen is if people work together. And I don't think you can ever point a finger at an old way of doing things or a new way of doing things as being so much better, but that, you know, the proof is in the pudding. And again, like I said, and I will say many times after, that leadership and education and understanding all of these things as a whole will help to make our city better. And we need to have more inclusiveness, more inclusion, you know, feedback from our citizens. We have beautiful parks all over the place, but no one playing in them. We have beautiful places to visit, like the Battleship, but none of the locals go there. We have a beautiful waterfront that has not been developed, and we need to develop it. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll start our second round of questioning now. So back to Mike Sylvia from the Fall River Reporter, who will ask a question first to Joseph Camara.
So as you know, the current city council is exploring a city manager. It would bring in a mayor and a vice mayor, who would become the president and vice president of the city council. What are your thoughts on bringing in a city manager into the city of Fall River in 2022 or later?
Well, I think that what we have in place right now works. It's worked for an awful long time. Unfortunately, we had an individual that didn't turn out to be the right person for that job. So therefore, it brought up this type of discussion. But I think for years and years and years, if we have a city charter with a strong mayor and a city council that is also in charge of the budget, it's also a strong council. People might not look at it that way, might say it's a weak council, but the council has a lot of authority. A lot of what goes on in the city is council-driven. So there's a lot of things that we can do. I don't believe that you're going to solve the problem by having a city manager who has 9 city councils that are going to vote on his contract and approve it. I think you get more problems because now you have a manager that's satisfying 9 city councils, where you have a mayor that just has to tell the public why he's going to do a good job or not, and then the council has to independently tell the public why they're going to do a good job or not, and then you see if they can all work together to make it work. It's worked in the city for many years. We've done a lot of wonderful things. Unfortunately, we ran across an individual that wasn't right for that position, and I supported him in the past. So I was fooled, as were many other people who supported him in the past, and I don't think that's the need to change the entire city form of government. So I don't think it's a good idea, and it's one that I don't support.
Ms. Dion.
I don't support the city manager idea either. One of the reasons that I don't is I feel you're taking the right of the voter away from them. Right now, the voters determine who leads the city. If we go to a management form of government, the members of the council would be the ones who would determine who the city manager would be, determine basically their length of service. If they felt they were, providing properly, they would keep them there. If not, they would be able to remove them. But I think you'd be taking the right away from the voter. Also, the vote would automatically determine who was president and who was vice president. And I think the council really, in essence, should be able to make that choice, because the council has to work together, and the councilors have to have confidence in who's leading them. So I think that, they shouldn't lose their right to choose who has that position.
Mr. Malcolm.
So I don't believe personally in a city manager. I do believe that democracy should prevail, and that the voter, being educated, should be able to decide who leads our city as mayor. That the city council will always be sort of checks and balances to that, and that we as a community really need to start speaking up about what we feel is right and what we feel is wrong. So to take that power away from the mayor, who is voted by the people, I think would undermine the authority of the citizens to be the deciders of who should be there and what direction our city should go in. And like Michelle and Joe said, I completely agree with them that if we had the right person in that position at this time of economic development and in this time of economic growth, we might have seen even greater gains in our city. So we need to stay conscious of, what the person has done before, where they are, and where they're headed to. And it's really important to learn from our past, plan for our future, but don't live in either. Each and every day we need to make count, and we need to work together in order to make that happen. So I would not be for a city planner. I think maybe the charter, our city's constitution, needs to be taken maybe a closer look at, and some things need to be changed. So for that, I would say that let democracy prevail. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Springer.
Yeah, I'm definitely against a city manager. As Councilor Kamara said, we've had a system in the city that has worked for a long time. I'm a big fan of don't fix what's not broken. Unfortunately, as Councilor Kamara said, we had one individual that wasn't quite qualified for the job and kind of put a bad cloud on the whole way the system works. It's you don't put a whole company under because the CEO is bad. You just hire a new CEO. So we have the charter in place to keep these checks and balances. We have the city council, which keeps the mayor in check and have these checks and balances. So I don't think a city administrator or a city is going to solve the problem. The mayor only has a 2-year term, so if we don't like what's going on, put that power back in the voter. Let them go out and vote to change the leader of the city. So I'm a very big fan of keeping that power back in the voter, not just in an appointed individual that could have essentially have too much power for too long.
Thank you. Mr. Tiff.
Wow. I mean, if we're gonna decide, for example, decide to take that direction, getting a city manager come into Fore River, we are reinventing our government, and we shouldn't, because if we do that, we all fail. Not only city elected official, but also for the people as well. So we need to work together and strengthen up the area of weakness where we can work together as one instead of pointing at each other. Because city elected official is the co-founder of the backbone of our city. And we should not eliminate that. And the people who voted, they are the people who prevail the democracy. And I think the city management wouldn't be doing any good. We should work together instead, looking for that way. Because if one bad apple on the tree fall on the ground, it doesn't mean you're gonna, the whole apple tree is gonna be bad. So we have to think about that.
Thank you. Our next question will be asked by Phil Devitt from the Herald News, and will be answered first by Mark Mollicone.
So the City Council this week moved discussion of several proposed streetscape projects to the Committee on Finance after it appeared that this series of roadway improvements might be scrapped altogether, due in part to cost and quality concerns. How would you like to see these street projects, in particular, move forward? And what role should the council have in similar revitalization efforts going forward?
Well, I think that's an excellent question, Phil. That's something that I feel very strongly about, since in the last 2 years I've blown out 5 tires and warped 2 rims. And I had to pay for it all by myself. I didn't go to the city, the government center, and ask for my money back. I do believe that as a council, we could oversight what's being done, how the money's being spent. I think it's very important to get as many streets done as well as possible. My being no stranger to construction, I realize that you get what you pay for, or should. And when you move forward with a project like streetscapes, you really have to stay on top of the contractor and subcontractors in order to know what's being done at what cost and how. In order for city street lights, directional lights, such as red lights and such, to not actually be figured in and to have the problems that we've had with certain companies is mind-boggling to me. Any project that you do, you really have to have a plan and understand where you're heading. So for myself, the money that was spent, I would rather have gotten 50 streets done than 3 main streets. I believe Plymouth Avenue needs to be done, North Main Street, South Main Street. I think we need to do some streetscapes in certain areas to, let folks know that we're serious about economic development, but we all need to work together and be responsible for what's being done.
Thank you. Mr. Springer.
Streetcapes, hot topic. I happen to be in the neighborhood of East Main Street, where the big controversy was over that streetscape. If anybody's drove down that road, I'm not a construction worker or anything, but I know it's probably not done correctly. So is dumping $1.5 million into a single street the answer? Probably not. If anybody drives around the city, probably 80% or more of the roads are quite an interesting ride to drive down, to say the least. So I'm definitely with Mr. Malcolm saying I'd rather see 30 or 40 streets get fixed and not worry about fancy lighting and all kinds of that stuff, and not worry about blowing out rims. And we just deserve better roads. I mean, I know we live in New England with the snow plows and things that damage these streets, but a sinking over $1 million into a single street, the right answer? I don't believe so. Like I said, just the debacle we went through with East Main Street, which is still not solved and nobody knows where the money's coming to fix this street, I think is a very good example of why it's not quite the right answer to what's going on with the streetscapes.
Mr. Tith.
Fore Rivers, the street is very important because I drove around too and also get flat tires as well. But, every project that we look into, we have to do an assessment, and also we have to go to the site to see how it's going to play out, and then we'll have to look into what money that's coming and spent, because just only 3 or 4 streets with a couple $1 million, you could get more street to fix it, and I believe that we could do more study on that. Not just say, hey, when it's time to for a meeting with the administrator, say, hey, what is your plan? What is done? I would like, if I was elected, I would like to go to the site and ask question and ask the constructor, hey, can I see this? And who is your referral? I would like to go to them, check every point of view before making any decision.
Thank you. Mr. Camara.
So streetscapes, well, a long time ago, there was a gentleman named Mr. Shavs, the Shavs Market down at the bottom of Columbia Street, and he pretty much started streetscapes when he donated a bunch of cobblestones to the city, and they fixed up the plaza and made it look really nice. Didn't cost the city any money, and it was a nice thing. I think he did it in conjunction with the city, but he donated a lot of that stuff, and it looked nice. We've never done a streetscapes project as long as I can remember for being on the council. And I supported streetscapes. I supported the concept. Let's beautify certain neighborhoods that had people who made investments in restaurants and businesses there that wanted to see the streets more user-friendly for pedestrians and parking and whatnot. But then you get into the details, and you find out that there's cost overruns that nobody anticipated. You find out that at the same time you're doing utility work, that the utility company made a mistake, and now when the project's done, they're going to come back up and dig it up again. Whose fault is that? Who are we going to blame? You find out that Liberty Utilities is going out through the entire city, putting in new gas mains, ruining the streets that we're fixing already, on top of the streets that we're planning on the streetscapes, and you're trying to coordinate all of that together. So I don't disagree with my colleagues and say maybe we should relook at this. Bedford Street project, I think, should definitely go forward with the streetscapes. We spent $90,000 approximately on that project. I think it's a good project that needs to continue. But looking at all the other streetscape projects that we have going on, we probably should do more investment in local streets. But at the same time, we got to bring in utility companies that are ruining our streets more than ever before at a record pace. We got to make sure that we get this under control so that Mr. Malco doesn't continue to ruin his tires in his car.
Thank you. Ms. Dion.
Thank you, Joe.
Yes, the city council definitely did vote to fund streetscapes. And I believe that infrastructure is very important and does play a role in economic development. However, with that said, even though the ideology was good, it unfortunately did not meet expectations. I believe that funding at this time should be suspended There are certain portions, I believe, of projects that aren't complete that I think need to be evaluated so they can determine how, how much further they should move forward, and at least getting them to a place where they're sustainable, and this way they can determine where to put the funding next, what to do, what streets to take care of. I believe that oversight is paramount, that, you shouldn't just have an idea, roll out a plan, and then just let it go. I think one of the problems that they ran into, again, which caused some cost overruns, where I believe that they hit granite, they had to do some blasting. I say, surprise, surprise, I think that's why they call us the Granite City. I've learned on the campaign trail you can't even put a stake in the ground without hitting rock. So I don't think that should have been a big surprise, but apparently it was. So again, I think, yes, the funding should be suspended until it can be evaluated and determine the best possible option moving forward.
Thank you. Our next question will come from Pam Martin and will be answered first by Ricky Tiff.
Okay. Thanks, Keith. My second question deals with promoting diversity in our city employees, particularly teachers and first responders. I just had the privilege of meeting our first Cambodian police officer ever hired on the force. Great young man, he's excited for his job. So how do we make our police departments, our fire departments, our teachers more reflective of our mixed community here?
I think, I know the young man that you were talking about, because I talked with him, and he's excited to be on the force. Well, first, I think we need to educate more into the community about regarding, like, in a police station, what public safety and also fire department, how to be part of the daily job function and stuff, so they will understand. And these officers, every day they go to work in there, like they always, it's always in a part of a danger. So educating more them into the community about how we can encourage them to be part of the system.
Thank you. Mr. Camara.
Yeah, that's a great question. And like I said earlier, I speak 3 languages. My father's Portuguese, my mother's from Venezuela. I was born in this country. My wife's Arabic, she's Lebanese. We speak 4 different languages in our house, and I think that diversity is a great thing. I think what you need to do is make people realize that no matter where you come from, no matter what your beliefs are, religious or anything else, you can do and be anything you want to be. If you put the time in and you study and you work hard, you can accomplish great things in this world. And I think we shouldn't be building walls around any of our departments at all. I think we should be encouraging people to participate from all different ethnicities of life, because we are a melting pot. This city is a reflection of this country, and I think that the more people you can get from diverse communities to be involved locally at all forms of every aspect of government, have them in City Hall, have them in the police department, fire department, teachers, you name it, public works. I think the more you can incorporate people and their different ethnicities, the better off we'll be as a city, as a world, as a planet. I encourage all of that.
Thank you. Ms. Dion.
Yes, I think, when you live in a diverse world, you need diversity in all areas of employment. I think there are certain employment opportunities that require an education that some of the people who have moved here may not possess at this point in time. I think we need to instill an environment of learning that is inclusive and allows every child to thrive, so that and instill in them that all of these possibilities are out there. You can strive towards any form of employment that you want, so that they can gain the education, so that they can fill the teaching positions. And I also think that not all people are aware of how to apply for civil service positions either. There is a process to it. And I'm sure that there are people out there that don't even realize, you can stop by going to City Hall and it's posted on the walls, the positions that are opened. what you need to have to qualify for those positions and how you go about the testing, et cetera. So I think it's a concerted effort. I think part of it's education and part of it is just awareness, but I definitely think the more diversity we have, the better.
Thank you. Mr. Malcolm.
So I think Joe and Michelle both brought up great points in that diversity is a great thing for our city, especially in the civil service aspect. I think we need to have a better outreach to folks in the community to get them involved and to give them the awareness and understanding of how to become civil servants in our city, both police, fire, EMTs. I have friends from all ethnicities. My father is Italian, my mother is Russian Jewish, Ukrainian Jew. I grew up, again, playing football and other sports, whether it was basketball, baseball, football, or track. Football was one of the most diverse sports that I had been involved in. And living in Miami for a year, I was able to encounter many diverse ethnicities, from Cuban to African American, inner city and suburban, as well as Hispanic and Asian even. And I embraced all of them. They were my teammates, they were part of my family, and I tried to understand their culture and themselves as well. So I think it's very important for a diverse city like ourselves to have a diverse city civil service folks out there to truly get out there and be a part of our community and to connect. It's very important. So,
Thank you. Mr. Springer.
Yeah, diversity. Fall River is quite literally built on diversity and immigrants. This is what built our city. This is what made us incredible right from the start. So working in the medical fields and in real estate, I meet people from different walks of life, religion, sex, color, every single day of my life. I can tell you quite literally they all bleed red. And quite literally, if your house is on fire or you need to go to the hospital, you're not going to care about that person's sex, color, religion, whatever the case is. So as long as they're qualified for the job, they have the right qualifications, they can meet the standards for that particular job, absolutely diversity. Is it something that needs to be more of? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some jobs are predominantly more one way or another, so maybe giving some education to some people saying, hey, I mean, look at recently, we just hired our first female firefighter ever. That's incredible. How long has the city had a fire department? We just got a female. So that's a step in the, absolutely in a positive direction. So I think that's a great step in the right direction, and diversity is going to be like I said, what we're built on. So that's great to have those jobs available.
Thank you. Up next is Alan Zarek to ask our next question, and it will be answered first by Michelle Dion.
Should Fall River institute term limits for school committee, city council members, and the mayor?
Though many people disagree with me, I feel that voting is term limits. You have the ability every 2 years to determine who will sit on and who won't sit on the city council, who will be in the mayor's office, who will be a school committee member. And I understand that people say, well, many have been there for many, many years. Well, we've had the opportunity to change them every 2 years, because to me, it's a double-edged sword. So to one person, there may be somebody in a seat that they don't feel should be there, that never seems to be voted out, but yet the other side of it is they may have somebody who's a seated counselor who they think should be there for forever. I think very often it's a matter of perception, who's there, who they believe should be there or shouldn't be there at any given moment. So the long and the short of it for me is I believe that voting is term limits.
Thank you. Mr. Malcolm.
So for myself, I agree with some of what Michelle has to say as far as democracy and voting really does determine term limits. However, I would not be against term limits, considering I think folks can be complacent, their ideas somewhat get stale possibly, or they get stuck in what's known as either a rut or, in their own ways. And it's very difficult to get 9 people to agree on anything, much less one person who's been somewhere for a very long time, to be open-minded and understanding of new ideas, diversity, and a better way. For myself, I pride myself on being open-minded, understanding, being able to put on someone else's shoes and understand where they're coming from. I routinely go back to where I'm from, Rolling Green. I drive around there probably every 3 to 4 months to remember where this little redheaded boy came from, and it's very important to remember where you came from. So for me, I hope that my ideas never get stale and that my leadership never grows old, but I would be in favor of term limits, I think, both on the city level and also the national level for our state reps, our senators, as well as obviously our president. So if it works at the presidential level, it could work at any other level. Thank you.
Mr. Springer.
Yeah, so Mr. Malco made most of the points I wanted to address. I am definitely in favor of term limits. I think some people in any employment, doesn't matter if it's political or private sector, if you're in that job for a long time, you can kind of get into a routine per se, where you're just kind of going with the motions. I'm a big fan of new faces, new blood, new ideas. It's a body of 9, so like he said, getting one person's idea doesn't really have a huge weight. You have to get the vote of 5 or better to get that to pass. So term limits, I think, are a positive thing. I think they keep the system new, refreshed, new faces, new ideas. What the magic term limit is, I don't know. So when those votes come up, I think that's where the voter can decide of, if they want to go on to another term. So definitely a fan of term limits, keeping new faces, new blood, new ideas. I think that's very important to keep in any entity moving forward in the right direction.
Mr. Tiff.
I believe we could give it a try. After all, we in the city of give it a try. Because, for 2 years, I don't think it's a lot of opportunity for any elected official to get the works done. Because by the time he worked on a project, and then next thing you know, the year's coming up again, and then the project is going to be gone. So definitely we should look into it, and if it's not working, we go back to the same as we are right now. But it's always an opportunity or process to look, keep it as consideration for the term.
Mr. Camara.
Well, I don't think there's a CEO in the country that would fire a good employee because they've been there for too long. My wife works at Rhode Island Hospital. This year, she celebrates 30 years as an employee of Rhode Island Hospital. I worked for 20 years in an import company, and after that company was sold, I currently work at another company for the past 12 years. So if someone's doing a good job, I think they deserve to keep their job. And the people have every 2 years, as Michelle says, she's right, I have a 2-year term. And then I have to go back and re-identify myself to the public and tell people why it is that they should select me to the city council again. And then again 2 years from now if I want to keep that job. And again 2 years later if I want to keep that job. And the public determines whether or not we will have the right counselor there. I don't think it's a job where you get stagnant. I don't think it's a job where you can't go to the city council meetings. You can't participate in committee meetings if you don't enjoy it, if you don't think your heart's into it 100%. The people who don't, trust me, they don't get reelected. And we've had a lot of change in the council. We've had some people that have been there for some time. I've been there for 24 years. Very grateful that the people have put their trust and faith in me to continue to do that job. But every election, we get three new councilors, 4 new councilors. 1/3 of the council is mixed practically every election. When I was elected, there were 6 of us that were new. And it happens. A few years ago, there were 5 new councilors. So the people in this community, they know who deserves to get elected or not, and that's who they decide to vote for.
Thank you.
So I don't agree with term limits.
Our next question will be asked by Donna Mota and will be answered first by Matthew Springer.
Thinking about your personality traits and how you present yourself to the world, what subcommittee would you like to serve on the city council? What strength would you bring? And on the flip side of that, which subcommittee would you, for lack of a better word, avoid?
I think I'd bring a pretty strong community with the, I've been involved with real estate for quite a long time, with owning a home. So I'm very in tune with tenants, landlords, how those different things that the city does affects those people directly and indirectly. So I think I come with a little bit of knowledge and understanding to that aspect of what most people need as a house. Where I would have a little weaknesses is ordinances. I've never been involved in making laws or changes or how different things are changed in the community every single day. So that's something I would kind of not want to be so involved in as far as when it comes to real estate and land and housing and those different things that affect our citizens every single day, because I've been in tune with it since I was 25 years old.
Thank you. Mr. Tiff.
I think I will be in the area of tourism, and because I say why I'm so interested in that, because I feel that I could be an asset of bringing more people into the city, because as I develop, our organization developed the festival called Southeast Asia. It was the the festival one of a kind. We was able to do it for a short term to bring a lot of ethnicity come into the city, and that's the component that I want to say, hey, this is Fore River, and we have a festival going on here. And it did attract a lot of people coming in, because now they question, wow, why is such a small city? They have they have Hmongs, they have Laos, Cambodian, Thais, doing this performance at the waterfront, because the waterfront is beautiful. And I think Fore River, moving forward, we need to make more festival into the waterfront by working together with the city official and with the nonprofit and with the people and stuff, so make them more welcoming. Because the more we show a city, the more people in the world look at it. Because right now we have a social media that is a very powerful tool to use. So why we take it up for granted?
Thank you. Mr. Camara.
Yeah, that's a great question. I've served on every subcommittee there was. I like them all, actually. The only problem with subcommittees is that some subcommittees, there's more action than others, and that's just the nature of the way we are. Public Works and Transportation is always going to have more issues than Environmental Affairs. Not to say that Environmental Affairs doesn't have its issues, but they're not as often and they're not as frequent, and they don't come before the council as much. The Regulations Committee has a lot of action going on. The Ordinance Committee certainly does as well. And everyone serves on the Finance Committee, which is always at every council meeting. And some committees, you don't get that type of action. But I think, I've never told the president of the council that I don't want to serve on this committee. I always tell them, whatever you need me to serve on, that's what I'll serve on. You can pick it. And what the council president does is they look at people's strengths and weaknesses and say, will this individual fit on this? Is he able to do this and that? And they put three individuals, except for the Ordinance Committee, where it's 5, on the committee together that can work well together and help suit the needs of that committee. They're all busy at certain times, some a lot more action than others. Economic development, sometimes it's got a lot of action going on, sometimes it doesn't, depending on what's going on. But I like serving on them all. I don't think any of them are very boring. They're all interesting when you're in a subcommittee, and whether it's economic development or regulations, the people that are there discussing the issues, it's always something that needs to be fixed and addressed, what makes it interesting. So I don't mind serving on any of them. I've served on all of them, and hopefully I'll continue to serve on them.
Thank you. Ms. Dion.
Thank you. As a city councilor, I would serve on whatever committee they choose to place me on. I am not a person who is afraid to learn. I am not afraid to roll up my sleeves, dig in, and tackle a problem. I do like the idea of being on the Youth and Elders Committee. I don't feel that gets enough attention. I would like to bring the youth and the elder to the table. I think we need to have more programs, and I think that I think it's just a committee that can just help. And I think hopefully it could be a place that people who don't feel connected could finally feel like they are connected and have a connection. And the other committee that I find very intriguing is the Committee on Ordinances, because I do tend to be a right is right, wrong is wrong kind of person. And to me, that's a big part of their role.
Thank you. Mr. Malcolm.
So for myself, I'm by birth a Pisces, and I tend to get along with just about any and everyone. I fashion myself a leader, one that leads by example, someone that stayed at the University of Alabama during the summer. One mandatory session, I actually stayed for both summer sessions and was the only one that did so on the team. So I would put the time and effort into whatever subcommittee I was asked to go on. There isn't one in particular I would want to be a part of, or one that I would not, because I would want to be a part of all of them. I would want to have an understanding and a say, so to speak, in every reach of our city, because I think I have a tremendous amount to offer, not only as a leader, but as a person and someone who grew up here and has traveled across the globe. And I think that Michelle touched on something that's very near and dear to my heart. The youth and the elderly. I have been meeting with youth and elderly throughout my life, whether it was a fundraiser or a foundation, and it wasn't just recently. These are things I've always reached out to, as well as Special Olympics, which I had been a part of as well. So what I'd like to say is I'd like to be more inclusive to people that are younger, folks that are elderly, and really understand how to include more people and get more education out there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's start our third round of questioning now. We'll go back to Mike Sylvia from the Fall River Reporter, who will ask a question first to Matthew Springer.
So it's obvious the most successful students in school have involved parents. What ideas would you have to get parents more involved in their child's education?
Great question. I don't have children, so this is kind of a little tough one for me to touch on. But from what I understand with coworkers and colleagues that I work with, some of them open up their children's homework and they look at it and they go, I don't even know how to solve what's going on. I guess apparently some of the stuff that's being taught to very low grade education is very difficult. So maybe some more communication between the teachers and the parents on articulating what's going on. We have so many forms of communications now with email and Facebook and all these kind of things that I think it's very easy for them to put up maybe a video or something to that effect that can really get the connection with the student and the parent a little easier, rather than opening up a notebook from the teacher and saying, here's your homework, and them saying, well, how do I solve this? So that's a great question. Obviously, education is the backbone of most communities. That's where a child starts. If we're not giving them a good start, we're setting them up for failure. So having that communication with the teacher, the student, and the parent is obviously very, very vital in making sure that child's education is going to prosper for that student.
Thank you. Mr. Tith.
As a parent as a father for, I see the way the school, our school communicating, especially the teacher, they do an email, text and stuff. And I think we do everything that we can, try to encourage the parent to come in. But if some parents, they don't understand or read English and stuff, and some, they just like, okay, we don't want to see it, but mostly on Facebook. But so maybe we try to attack more into the parents by encouraging them, like, and doing, for report card times, and also for going, sending email letters to them, stuff, and try to encourage more, because I think it's not that we lack of communication with the parent. It's just we have to find ways to attract them to get more involved with their kids, get more involved with the school. So we have to look into some of the area that is more fundamental.
Thank you. Mr. Camara.
That's a great question. And, it gets back to diversity as well. There are a lot of parents who don't speak English fluently, struggle understanding the language, and therefore they're turned off about going and attending school and talking to teachers, parent-teacher night, talking to teachers what they can do best. I think having the right people in the schools is key. Having the people who can reach out to parents, having people who speak the language that the parents speak makes it a lot easier. They don't want to be there with their student translating back and forth every sentence. Making the school an inviting place, making it somewhere where parents will feel comfortable to go there with their children, after-school programs, whatnot, making it as friendly and user-friendly and as friendly as possible so that these parents will be used to going there, comfortable going there, having programs in place that can interact with students and parents together. It's something that we need to focus more on, because when I talk to parents, the first thing they tell me is that, and it's mostly people who have struggled with the English language, is that it's tough for them to go there and then not be able to talk to anyone without having someone they can talk to in their own in their own native language. So that's one of the things that we need to do more of. And also there are just some parents that, regardless how hard you try, because of the way that they live and they're working 2 jobs, sometimes 3 jobs, it's difficult to make them go and participate in these events. So maybe sometimes we need to reach out and go see them and have more people reach out to them to make them know that, you know, their son's making progress or their daughter's making progress in different things and bring them together. But it's a great question. It's something that we need to do more of, and it's the key to turning around education.
Thank you. Ms. Dion.
Yes, I agree also that as time has gone on, you know, the new math, people don't understand it. A lot of us, you know, we were great at the basics, we were great even, you know, with the fractions and many things like that, but the new math is just so foreign. And I don't even understand how you can teach a child that when you do a register in a checkbook, you round it off. How do you round off a checkbook? I think a lot of people would bounce many more checks if we did that. So I think that's one of our problems. We also live in a society where now very often both parents have to work. That has made education more remote for the parents because they don't have the time, they don't have the availability to get involved. The emphasis on testing has also made it more remote. I think we need to return to a more traditional form of educating, and which would make it more parent-friendly. Putting the emphasis on testing and not on learning and teaching, I think has been a great detriment to our educational system.
Thank you. Mr. Malacone.
I agree with Michelle in that sometimes you have to revert back to some of the old ways. We find ways of innovating and teaching kids new methods to problem solve. But in order to get parents involved, for me, I do have 2 children. I know that daycare can be extremely costly. Working a job very hard and trying to be the best that you can be at your place of employment can take up a lot of time. I personally owned my own insurance agency, and it took up a lot of time because it's relationship-based. So for me, I think the one way to get parents more involved in the student and their affairs would be to have some type of meetings where it's not just about school, but it's about getting to know the parents, their situation, and maybe we do have to have an outreach where we go to the home and offer some type of food. I know that's one thing that would definitely get me to come to the schools if they had a dinner. I know we've done plenty of chow mein dinners and soup stuff at some of the high rises and whatnot, and that always brings people out. So to bring me to the school as a parent, I think food would definitely be a fine way to get me there, but also being interested in the children's education. We just need to find a way to educate the parents and get them into the schools and understand. And I think maybe New School might do that. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Being respectful of time, I'd like to try to get one more question out, but what we'll do is we'll ask the candidates to answer in 1 minute instead of 90 seconds. So we'll have one more question from Phil Devitt from the Herald News, and that'll be answered by Joseph Camara first.
Okay, well, some of you touched on this in your answers to the first question. So this country's opioid crisis continues to hit home, cutting lives short, hurting people of all ages and backgrounds, and taxing emergency services. What role should the city play in combating this growing problem?
Well, that's another great question. And I'm glad you recognize that the country this is not a city isolated problem, it's a country problem. We're currently in a lawsuit with a lot of other cities, communities throughout the country. And I think that what we need to do is just restrict the number of opioids that doctors can prescribe to people, first of all, because that's one of the biggest problems we're having. They deliberately know what they're doing, and nothing's being done to stop that. And the drug companies are abusing it as well. And I think you have to put regulations in place that limit what they can give out to certain individuals to stop them from getting in that situation to begin with. So I would support any type of regulation that would limit, the early on stages of when people get into this predicament.
Thank you. Ms. Dion.
I believe that there should be a cap on each community as to what we're capable of treating, how many people we're capable of helping. I think it should be a shared responsibility. I think all communities should be involved in it. It shouldn't be restricted to one community. I also believe that each and every addict has a path that led them to where they are. I believe that not only do we need to treat the addiction, but we need to treat the soul, and we need to treat the person to heal, try to help to heal whatever it is that caused the addiction, which obviously in their life would continue to be a trigger in their addiction. You know, it's something that, you know, this problem didn't start yesterday. We allowed it to happen, and it's not going to end tomorrow. It's something we're going to have to work on long term.
Thank you. Mr. Malcolm.
So for myself, I have a very close friend from the age of 3 or 4 years old. We were best friends in Rolling Green. When I moved away at the age of 13 or 14, that's when he went down that path of addiction. Somewhat feeling responsible myself for not being there for him. Addiction is near and dear to my heart. I believe we have to have educational programs not only for the addict, but as well for folks who are outside or in the community, so that we can get addicts back out into the real world and you know, focused on being, you know, part of the community and also getting back to working. My best friend, who will remain nameless. We had breakfast last week. He's currently working. He's a great father. He has been a great father. He's had some stumbling blocks, but education at an early onset, early education for children not to go down that road, and later on also educating is important.
Thank you. Mr. Springer.
Yeah, so obviously opioids are a terrible tragedy, not just here in Fall River, but it's a nationwide thing. From what I understand, our programs like STAR, their first stay is, I think, only 6 days, if I'm quoted. So I think that's obviously not enough time to cure somebody that's been on this path for a long time. So I think they need more treatment time in those particular programs. Another thing I'm a big advocate for is educating the youth younger on the dangers of these things and exploring more natural remedies. Unfortunately, the government has put a lot of red tape on opening up these natural remedy stores. And I think there needs to be a little more maybe education process and ways that we can curb this epidemic by using more natural ways rather than all these prescription painkillers that put these people in a predicament that they can never get out of.
Thank you. Mr. Tiff.
Drug is a federal big issue, and as a local city, we only could help to educate the people in our community as well by working with private organizations, like for example STAR, to see what they do every day, and to also educate in school to make sure they don't have any use any drug, especially also reach out to citizens who have dealt with the problem. You know, try to encourage them by creating more events. Because I did a couple events with some people who go through those paths, and when they talk about their life story and stuff, and it's very heartwarming to see how they turn around. And I don't think we should take them for granted.
Thank you, Mr. Tiff. Time now for our 90-second closing statements, and our first closing statement tonight will be delivered by Ricky Tiff.
The city, we are in the city of Macon here. It was built in pursuit of American dreams, and like I was once back home, I might from Cambodians in 1975. But luckily, I have the opportunity to sit up here and speak to you, the voter, about to be part of the city. And I hope it will be a strong encouragement for everybody else that is minority or to be minority or immigrants to take part of the city, because this is our city and it's beautiful, and we should help each other moving forward together instead of finger pointing. So hopefully on November 5th, hope you give me an opportunity to work for you, because I'm ready to roll up my sleeve. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Camara.
First of all, let me begin by thanking you, Keith. You did a wonderful job tonight. Also want to thank the Fore Reporter, Fore Herald News, FIG-TV, WSAR, and for community media as well. Thank you very much. I also want to thank the residents and people that are watching this at home. My wife and I were both first-generation Fore River-born residents here. We raised our 3 children here in our home. Our children all attended the Fore River public school systems. I truly believe that Fore River is a great place to raise a family, work, and earn a living here. I take this job very seriously. I've run for city council a long time ago to make improvements, and I feel I've done that. I've talked earlier about the infrastructure improvements I've made, the improvements in public safety, and improvements in education. This is, something that I take very seriously. Talk to a lot of different people about a lot of different issues, get their ideas, put their things in place, and then bring it to the council chambers, and hopefully we make this city much better than what it was when I first came to the council. So I don't want to get on too much, but I love this community. I've served with a lot of different city councils, a lot of good city councils, served a lot of good mayors, served a lot of good people in this community. The department heads here do a wonderful job. We all have one thing in common. We all want to make Fore River a better place. I'm very fortunate that the people have put me there to help be a part of that. And on November 5th, I respectfully ask for your continued support so I can continue to make this place a better city. So I appreciate one of your 9 votes on November 5th. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Dion.
Thank you. Yes, I would like also to thank everybody that's here that took their time to ask us the questions, everybody who took the time to watch and listen. I would like to reach out to you today to humbly and respectfully ask for your vote in the municipal election this year on Tuesday, November 5th. I am an advocate for community policing for a safer city, affordable housing for those on fixed and moderate incomes, public safety, fiscal responsibility in government, programs for our youth to keep them active and positive members of our society, and to continue our effort to overcome addiction. As your city councilor, I will put the community first. I will put the people first. I think it's time to move our city in a positive and constructive direction. We must restore confidence in government. And if I may, I would like to go back to where I lost my place and lost my mind on the cannabis question and state that, no, I don't think one person should be the face of it. I think there should be a committee, and that committee should include somebody from the medical field, law enforcement, the city council, school committee, and someone who's involved in treatment for addicts. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Malacone.
Well, first off, I'd like to thank everyone for having me here, for giving me a voice, and for hopefully on November 5th earning your trust and respect enough to vote for me on November 5th. I was born and raised here. Like I said, I've lived all over. I've experienced many things in my life. I have family that are military. I've experienced many things, been through cancer myself, had 13 months of chemotherapy, every day had to pass the Jimmy Fund in order to get to my infusion, and it made me realize just how precious life is. Our community has been through a tremendous amount in the last few years. I think that things will get much better with leadership and with community, including people, getting people involved, education, and also fighting for what I had said earlier, the Promise and Cherish Act, and bringing $1.5 billion to urban cities and communities throughout the Commonwealth, because we are at a disadvantage educationally. There's just not enough tax money to support what we need to do in order to move forward as a community and to have economic redevelopment. So I'd like to be more inclusive. I'd like to use what God gave me, 2 ears and 1 mouth, listen twice as much as I speak, and to be a representative of the people. Again, we are resilient, and we can work together.
Thank you.
In our blue-collar community. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Springer.
First off, thank you guys so much. This has probably been one of the most humbling and honoring experiences of my life, just being able to get nominated to get the chance to serve the community that I've lived in my entire life. So on that note, what I want to say to the voters out there is, one thing I believe in is not making promises I can't keep. One thing I pride myself is saying whatever administration is in place at that time, I will work with them to make the best decisions for our community. I'm a hardworking homeowner taxpayer just like everybody else in this city. I've never been involved in city politics or government in my entire life, so I have zero prior agenda for running for office other than the fact that I truly do love our city. I wanted to make it have a voice, to be somewhere we can all prosper and be a proud place that we all live and are proud to say, I'm from Fall River. So with that being said, the time for change is now. We've all talked about it. Get out and vote on November 5th. I would be honored to serve as your city councilor and to be your voice in our government. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank the candidates and the panelists for participating in tonight's forum. Also want to thank our FRC Media staff working behind the scenes, Michelle Dumas, Steve Rice, and our timekeeper tonight, Lucy Cabral. I also want to thank Sean Elliott and his staff here at Bristol Community College for accommodating us here in the theater. You can watch a replay of this forum and find out more about all the candidates running for office by tuning into FRC Media Channel 95, as well as our website, frcmedianews.org. For those watching live, we invite you to stay with us. We'll be back in about a half hour at 8 p.m. We'll be hosting our second City Council panel of the night. And also make sure to join us on election night, as we'll be working with our colleagues at FRG-TV to provide coverage of the election results. So for all of us here, thank you and have a good night.